Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire in the SBN Small Business Network podcast. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we have a very, very special guest. She is the co-founder of Build-A-Biz Kids, Miss Leah Coase. How you doing today, Leah?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. And I just want to thank you for coming on here today. I mean, I looked at your background and I was like, wow, look at what she's doing. That's pretty amazing stuff.
I appreciate that. I think so too, but I'm biased. So
So the number one question the audience probably is wondering, who is Leah Coase?
sure. Well, actually it's Leah Coase, but
My bad.
it's all good. It's all good, man. You know what? People actually often than not put an R in my name thinking it's Cross. So Coase is totally cool. Yeah. So, I mean, who am I? I mean, who the heck are any of us? We're all just people kind of trying to make our through this mess and live the greatest life that we can live. And there's unfortunately a never ending list of things we can learn. So, I mean, for me, I'm actually just kind of in the last few years, even really peeling back the layers of my journey and how I actually got here. And that's where, you know, as a youth, I guess we all have stories. Some of us grew up in really rough households, communities, cultures, countries. For me, mine was not anything too unconventional. I was a child of divorce, like so many others. At 4 years old, my parents split up. It was not a friendly one. And then they both went on into other relationships. And from my childhood lens, these other relationships and the decisions that were being made on the households I had to live in were very aggressive and toxic and just certainly not a place that, you know, children are going to grow up happy and healthy and feeling, you know, a strong understanding of who they are and the things they can accomplish in this world. And I built up this anger, I guess, being frustrated as you can get as a child. You know, you have no autonomy. You don't even get to choose what you eat for dinner most nights, let alone, you know, these big life decisions of where you have to live and the day-to-day of what that looks like and feels like, more importantly. So once I became about, 13, and finally a divorce had occurred with one of these toxic households, I was like, hey, I'm going to make some decisions myself. And you're not going to stop me, you know, typical teenager defiance era. And I started making lots of decisions just to feel that semblance of control. But that was a very slippery slope, because while you feel empowered in the moment with those short-term feelings of gratification, whether that be you're making poor decisions to fit in with a group, you're making decisions to frankly just piss off your parents. You know, I was doing drugs, I was dealing drugs. I got into fights at school and got kicked out of school. I stopped living at home, was living with a boyfriend. I got tattoos at 14 that were homemade. I mean, everything that would be a parent's worst nightmare. I was like, woo, I'm in. And you know, I wasn't going to graduate on time, if at all, because I was going to now this kind of alternative school. And it's interesting because I don't think, again, that story is necessarily too crazy, nor something that we haven't heard or even experienced ourselves to some degree. But it was more so, you know, when we look at today, youth under 25, they have the highest rate of mental health difficulties today out of any other age group. And that's not just an issue to them. That's becoming an economic issue. It's becoming a cultural issue. And it's certainly becoming an issue to them being able to flourish. And so where this onion that I've been peeling back is wondering why, like why and how did I escape the possibility of suicide or self-harm, the possibility of leaning too far into drugs or going too far into doing criminal activities? And, you know, what was that? And that's really where this journey has come from, and why I do everything that I do with Build-A-Biz Kids, why I now speak on building your identity on purpose and becoming someone you can really admire. And it's because there was this pivotal moment that occurred. And I think it was because it was a conversation that was being had about me instead of to me. So my defenses were down. I didn't have to like tell somebody like, you're wrong and you're stupid. It was my boyfriend at the time who I was living with and his mom were having this conversation. I was sitting on the stairs. They didn't know I was there. And it doesn't even really matter what they said, but there was just this one line of the mom being like, you two aren't good for each other. And there was something that kind of hit me emotionally. And I didn't realize why at the time, But I recognized there was this huge gap. All of a sudden, it was kind of like, if you're trying to lose weight and you lose a little bit of weight every day, you don't notice, but then one day you look at the before and after picture and like, holy tamale, like that's significant. That's what happened. I had all of a sudden just felt this overwhelming sense of, what the heck am I doing? This is not actually who I am. I'm supposed to be strong and capable and take over the world and, fearless and able to travel on my own and all these things. I didn't know where that had come from, but I just had this feeling of I'm not operating to who I know that I am and operating at my full potential at this stage in my life. And so the poor guy, he finishes the conversation with his mom, walks upstairs, and I immediately break up with him. And then I go and I get 2 jobs. I go back to the regular school. I take extra courses during lunch. I graduate on time. I get my driver's license and I buy myself a car. And it's just this complete 180. And, having that kind of transformation usually only occurs when someone's been in a tragic accident or a near-death experience and they're like, oh my goodness, I got to change my ways. There's something so significant and powerful there. And it's really just through running Build-A-Biz Kids. So for context, it's a registered charity, and we teach kids all the things that we wish we learned. We have kids as young as 7 learning how to start and launch businesses or delivering TED Talks. We call them Kid Talks, creating online courses and e-commerce stores and all these future-ready skills. But what we're ultimately doing is putting them in these controlled stress environments, these real-world hands-on approaches of experiences, and that's forcing them to flex these human essential soft skills, things like resiliency, tenacity, leadership, confidence, empathy, communication, decision-making, self-awareness, the list goes on. There's over 70 of them. And that ultimately, what our goal is and why we work with kids so young is because before they hit that pivotal indicator year age, which is around grade 8 or 9 here in North America, that's the age where you can start to see if a youth is going to be high risk for mental health difficulties. And that, of course, was the years that I had my big pivotal, downfalls. And our goal is through these experiences for these kids to start to develop a really strong sense of who they are and what they're capable of, that they're proving to themselves. Not that their parents are telling them, their teachers, their coaches, their peers, social media. We want them to, before they start to care what the outside world thinks, and before the outside world, frankly, starts to care about, telling these kids who they are and what they should do in order to fit in, we want them to find that sense of self. And I had actually been running Biz Kids for, I want to say like 4 years before I actually understood how that related to me and why I'm so passionate about this mission of what we're doing with the charity. And that's because in the state of this toxic household, keeping in mind this was like latchkey kid era, I was around 11 or so, and I had a stepbrother who was about 12. And we loved money. We loved saving our allowances. He loved spending money. I would save my money. But we decided, and I'm pretty sure it was his idea, that we would start going on buses to flea markets and selling stuff. What we were selling, pretty much if it wasn't nailed down in the house, it was fair game. Like I remember I sold my mom's Beatles and Elvis records, like stuff that should not have been sold at a flea market for like a pop, right? But we would make little crafts and we go there and we sell them. And it was at that time that my confidence was huge. I mean, I had this feeling, especially in that confined environment where you feel like you don't have choices. I was like, you know what, if things get really bad one day, I know how to take the bus. I can get away. I can talk to strangers. I can ask for help. I know how to make money. I will be fine, and I can do anything. And that identity is what I believe really flashed me in the face, 10 years later, when all of a sudden I'm being confronted with this contrast of who did I think I was? And then like, this is not what I'm demonstrating. Like I'm supposed to be in a much different place here. And that's what allowed me to have this 180. So the mission of the charity and the mission of anything that I do when I talk about identity building on stage is really just about helping people to recognize that the identity you have to this stage, if you're not living the life that you want, it's most likely because you're still operating on the identity that was cultivated through survival and coping and then habit building. And that is not the type of identity. You can't be the person you are today and have a different life unless you transform into the type of person that can welcome and attract and operate in a high functioning way in that new life.
Wow, you gave us a lot there to unpack and everything just real quick. I mean, I love your story of what you overcame. I mean, we have similar backgrounds coming from divorce, substance abuse problems, and then go on to help kids. I mean, I think that's like God's mission for almost everybody, like to go help kids. So, why do you think that it is that most kids struggle with mental health issues?
Well, I mean, looking at, our generation, it's like the world we want to fit in, right? Ultimately, we want to fit in, we want to thrive, we want to be successful. And when you're young, you have to be a sponge. And you do that by either being told what to do or observing what to do. And our parents operated on the you get a job and you must contribute to society. And it's not about loving it or anything. It's about, are you doing your part? And then you got to pay your bills in order to have the life that you want. And, if you want to fit in, people need to like you. And, that kind of basic operating system. Now that operating system is still here today. So as children, we're sitting there going, how do I get love? Oh, well, my mommy and daddy love it when I get A's because I get praised when I get A's. So I should keep getting A's or else they might take their love away from me, right? Or my teachers praise me when I get A's, just as an arbitrary example using academics, but this can carry over into anything, your friends groups on how you look, the clothes that you wear. We're just constantly trying to meet other people's expectations so that we feel like we can relax and feel safe, that we're not going to be under attack. And while that seems really logical at a young age, it's obviously not sustainable because today more than ever, in our communities, if I did something stupid on a Tuesday at my school at 10 years old, by Friday, everybody had forgotten about it because 10 other people had done something stupid, right? And it just kind of is this operating of, oh, geez, I was really embarrassed. That'll be a traumatic memory for me, but it's not going to impact my life in a big way. Now, you can't do anything without it being recorded and documented for not only just your local community or your local school to judge you upon, but like the entire world. And now if kids get bullied to such an extreme for one thing, one silly mistake, even something that was taken out of context, they can't even change schools to get away from it because it can follow them. So, I think we all kind of consciously recognize that we're never going to be able to please everybody. And so it's exhausting to try and do that. But even then, sometimes we just go, well, I'm only going to care what these people think for the most part. And in fact, to make sure that I don't get judged by these people, I'm just not going to put myself out there as far, meaning I'm not going to spread my wings, reach for my goals, reach for the stars, because that's putting too much risk out there. There's going to be too many people giving me their opinions and I can't handle that. And so a lot of us stay shrunken and we don't want to fully expand into the incredible impact and fulfillment that we get experience through life. But even when you operate in that system where you're going, well, I'm only going to care what my parents and my close friends and my boss and my employees and maybe some of my clients that I need to interact with, I'm only going to care what they think. Well, you're still never going to meet all their expectations. Are you kidding me? And plus, are they living a life that you want? Why do you want their opinion? Why do you want to, get their feedback? It's like, asking somebody how to make, more money and complaining to them about money. And then they give you money advice, but meanwhile, they're broke too. Like, why do you want their opinions? And so one of the biggest superpowers that I believe any of us can have is the ability to control our own happiness. Like, imagine somebody, I don't know why, this is totally a generational thing. I picture Denzel Washington. I don't know why. He plays like really strong, confident people, right? And you think about him as a celebrity, as a person, but even any character he's played. And it's like, if somebody says, Denzel, you're stupid. Are you kidding me? That was the worst performance. Do you think, like, I just picture this man being like, okay, cool, thanks, man. And he just moves on with his day. Like it's that kind of strength that, to me, if you can become impenetrable to what other people say, and here's the catch, you can't care. You need to not care about the bad things they say, but in order to do that, you have to not care about the validation they give you as well. You can't need for the positive feedback either. You need to be able to ground yourself and recognize that you're not going to be able to walk away unscathed. We're all going to do stupid things. That's how we learn. That's how we get better. And if someone's going to hold that one bad thing against you, like, shame on them. because they're a hypocrite. We know that, right? It's about you just going, okay, I accept this. That sucked. I think I'm going to try something different next time as best as I can. And just control your own value system, control your own measurement and gauge as to how much are you the person that you aspire to be, and ultimately controlling your own happiness. That's the true definition of freedom to me in this day and age.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Can you touch a little bit on how people self-sabotage? Because that's kind of where we're going with this, where people are self-sabotaging their own happiness to seek out other people's validation.
Yeah, there's definitely the validation component, but let's maybe take it back. Like I think we can all agree that everybody's going to have an opinion of you, even when you're winning in life, right? If you lose 100 pounds, you know how many people then start hating on you for losing 100 pounds because you didn't do it the right way, or that's not healthy, or I don't know, you were prettier before, or you were nicer before, or, all these things. And it's all ultimately just them projecting. But like, how can you ever put someone down for losing a lot of weight, right? But there's people everywhere. Just check social media. So there's that part. But I think the part that I really want to hone in on when it comes to self-sabotage is, why is it that that person who lost those 100 pounds, why is it then sometimes often a year later, they've gained it back? Or why is it that statistically speaking, if you win the lottery and you get millions of dollars, statistically within 5 years, you're not going to just be back to where you were. You're actually going to be filing for bankruptcy. What happened, right? And what it really is inside, we have this identity that we've built. And it's primarily built based on coping and survival, on the labels that were given to us, not the ones that we chose to adopt and to then live through. And so if you are always told as a child, maybe you're a little kid and your mom and you have gone over to, one of her friend's house, and, she tries to introduce you to her friend, and you kind of grab onto her leg, and the mom goes, she's shy. She's just a shy child. Well, that is probably a label you're going to grow up and embody, and then create a self-fulfilling prophecy around of, I'm just a shy person. No, I could never get on stage like you. Oh, no. You don't want me to give you your toast at your wedding. I can't do that. I'm shy, right? It becomes this thing that you've embodied, and now it's become a fact. But of course it isn't, right? But it feels like one. And so even though there might be an identity that doesn't serve you, like being shy, or I've always been heavy. I've been a heavier person since I was a kid. I've always been broke. Money sucks. I feel like everybody's just trying to like screw me out there. They're trying to take my money. Everybody's always after me. They're always trying to do something that's going to hurt me, right? If we have this identity and this feeling, then all of a sudden, when we do win the $1 million, we do lose the weight, we're more comfortable back in this other persona because we don't actually have a new persona. We don't know how to operate as this new fit, healthy self, or this rich person with a lot of money and a lot of opportunities that they can do. And so that's where the self-sabotage comes in, not because we want to hurt ourselves, but because we're actually trying to claw our way back to this comfort zone, even though we would cry at night, hating ourselves for being this person. It was comfortable. It was the known. And so that's where this identity building on purpose really comes in, and becoming someone that you admire, becoming someone who can operate in that life that you ultimately want to live. And whether that's wealth or your professional success, relationships, spirituality, your health, your wellness, your fitness.
What advice would you give to somebody looking to make that identity change and overcome them beliefs about themselves?
Yeah. All right. So I want to give one piece of advice that I think can save you a lot of time. And that is, it doesn't actually matter why your identity is the way that it is. Sometimes before people want to start moving forward, they go, no, I need to know why I'm damaged like this, or why I feel broken, or why I keep sabotaging. And it's like, it doesn't matter if it's your mom's fault, your dad's fault, society's fault. Who cares, right? It doesn't. Love whatever it was that made you basically this way. Like, I know for me, I became very mean. I became very headstrong, opinionated, able to love my time by myself, and therefore wasn't great with other people. But that was a coping mechanism that I had to create in order to survive these toxic households. I needed to be able to be okay being lonely. I needed to build an edge and tell people when to, get lost and stand up for myself because I didn't feel like anyone else was standing up for me. So you have to kind of love and honor those coping skills that you developed because it helped you to survive. But now you are in a place where you can choose. And so the first question, so there's two questions that I get people to ask. The first question is, what is it that you want that you don't currently have? And start like smallish. Don't try to overhaul your entire life. So maybe it could be fitness wise, or it could be I want to have a healthy relationship with my parents or my partner or my children. It could be your wealth or your professional success. And say, what is it that you want? Now, maybe let's just use money. I think that's pretty universal. Even if you have it, we're always open to more. So what is it you want? Well, I want to get a raise and I want to make a lot more money. Okay. Second question is, don't picture yourself. Don't picture yourself because you can't picture yourself yet, but picture someone. It could be someone that you know. It could be someone that's faceless. It could be someone like Denzel Washington. Take a character, right? Whatever it is. Denzel, you're getting a lot of plugs here. So it could be that you picture this person who's actually living that life that you want. And so you would say, well, how does the person show up every day who has money or no money worries? Well, they probably walk a certain way and they probably talk a certain way. When they go to the grocery store, they don't have the same thoughts that I do. Their thoughts are probably like, what do I want for dinner tonight? Oh, that looks good and fresh. Let's get it. Never once are they questioning, well, how much is it? Is it on sale? No, they're just like, what do I want? Oh, I want a delicious meal. You know what? Why don't I invite the neighbors over? Oh, absolutely. Can you add like 2 or 3 more of those steaks onto my order, right? You think about, how does this person show up in their job? What do they act like? How do they react when someone cuts them off? How do they react when, once again, you're at the coffee shop and it goes, would you like to tip? Many of us are like, stop asking me for money. For them, they're probably like, yeah, I'd love to tip 20% on my $5 coffee. What is it that they act like? What are the traits? Then write those down and then do a really honest assessment of yourself. And this is so important that you do it yourself. You have to get really comfortable with being with yourself and your own thoughts. That's more difficult than it sounds in this day and age. Unless you really practice, say, meditation or yoga, for the most part, people want to grab their phones. They want to be distracted. I don't want to have to think about this right now. This is uncomfortable. I don't want to feel uncomfortable. I want to feel distracted, right? So you have to be comfortable with being by yourself. And then look at this list and go, what do I already embody, even if it's just a little bit? What do I already embody? What don't I embody yet? And that becomes your list of how you want to now start reprogramming your mind to operate. Our brain is honestly no different than, say, a golden retriever. And what I mean by that is a golden retriever is highly trainable. If you spend the time with it, you have habits and you praise it, you give it love. If the dog doesn't do what you want, you kick it, it's not going to do what you want. It'll probably become reactive and angry, or it will cower and it'll hide, right? Same thing here. You've got to speak to yourself with love. At the same time, though, if you do no training with a golden retriever, they're just a great big goofball who just wants you to throw the ball over and over and over again, right? And that's how a lot of us operate. We're just all walking around. If someone cuts us off in traffic, we're not thinking about, how do I want to show up in this situation? We're just giving them the finger and honking our horn and getting angry and then ranting in our head about them for the rest of our drive to work, right? Like that is how your identity shows up, is when you're by yourself and in those times when your guard is down. And that's no different than how a golden retriever operates. They're just walking around going, who's going to give me love or a treat? Who's going to rub my belly? Like, really just operating on a simple system. So we need to help them to flex and reprogram a different way of operating. And that's exactly what we need to do. Now, when life is hitting us in the face, it is very difficult, extra difficult to remove ourselves from those day-to-day reminders of how we're not living the life that we want, right? The bills come in, our boss overlooks us for a raise again, we stand on the scale, we get into another fight with our kids who won't do what we want them to, right? All these things. So doing something during the day is very difficult. But depending on who you are And when you're the most calm, usually first thing in the morning, and I mean first thing, I mean you haven't even gotten up to brush your teeth yet. Like first thing, you're still groggy, or right before you go to bed when you're starting to unwind. Those are the times when your mind is often the most quiet. And it's the most open to reprogramming. It's not too dissimilar from when you were a child, just going, I don't have the energy or the knowledge on how to do anything. So just feed me the information, right? And that's kind of the state that your mind is in. That's when you want to start programming it with new ways of thinking. Now, depending on if you are a spiritual person or a science person, I'll use both contexts of what you're actually doing here. So if you believe in science and you want to know how the brain works, well, there's something called the RAS, the reticular activating system. If you're more of a spiritual person, this is basically the epitome of law of attraction, okay? And embodying whatever it is you're putting your focus and attention towards. So what this is in the reticular activating system, law of attraction, is basically if I spilled a bunch of beads and they're all different colors on a table, you could just look at them, but it's just going to be overwhelming. And you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. But the moment I say, can you pick out all the blue beads? You can now focus in on the blue beads. But if while you're picking the blue beads, I'm like, hey, by the way, did you notice the orange ones? You're going to be like, I didn't even know there was orange ones here. I only see the blue beads, right? It's the same phenomenon that when people go buy a new car, they're like, oh, I love this. Oh, I've always wanted this car. And then they pull it off the lot and they're like, holy smokes, I've seen 6 others drive by. Like the cars were always there. The orange beads were always there. You just weren't tuned into them. So likewise, there's opportunities everywhere for money and opportunities for you to have a great interaction with your kids or to make different choices that will help your body and your mind to be healthier, right? But if you're not tuned into it, you're not going to see it. So what we need to do is start tilting the momentum in the direction where your brain is now seeing the orange beads too. They're starting to see the new car that you want. They're starting to see the opportunities for wealth. And that's where all of a sudden, you bump into somebody at the grocery store and you have a conversation, and that conversation makes you go down a different aisle. And then as you go down that aisle, you bump into somebody else, or it delays you that much longer so that by the time you walk across the street and you're leaving, you bump into somebody else. And all of a sudden, by the end of like 3 interactions, you've got a new job offer, or you've seen a new opportunity for somebody who wants to start running with you every morning. Like, things will just start to carry you there because your brain on an unconscious level is tuned into what you want. So this goes into now, what do you actually do in the mornings and the nights? You want to start writing down that list of those identity traits of the person who is living that life that you want. And you want to start identifying with it. It could be, I am someone who sees money everywhere. Money is available to me if I just take action towards it. There's opportunities for me to impress my boss. There's opportunities for me to find new roles in my line of work that are more fulfilling. Anything like that you can write down and start to embody. I'm the type of person who's really calm no matter what happens. So a lot of personality traits as well. You start to read these things. Now, of course, depending on how far away you are from that trait, your mind is going to be like, yeah, whatever. Like, that's real funny. Aren't you cute? Right. But the thing is it's a process. And so after 3 days of doing this, all of a sudden your reticular activating system and your momentum with your energetic field is starting to tap in to, well, maybe. And you see what your reticular activating system is it's constantly looking for evidence to prove what it believes. Right? And that's why when you're like, man, I'm so shy, or man, I'm such a klutz. A regular person stubs their toe or bumps their elbow like every couple of days, really, but we don't even notice it because we're like, geez, that was stupid, and we move on with our life. But because you've identified with it, your brain's like, yeah, see, you are a big old klutz. And you're like, reinforcement, right? And then you start being extra klutzy because, your mind's like, that's who you are. So we need to now start refocusing your brain into picking up on the orange beads, so to speak. And that is going to be, after a few days, it'll pick up on more of those beads. And now it's easier for it to find evidence of it. But you need to be consistent with it, just like you would training a golden retriever on how to sit and how to fetch. You've got to stay consistent with it. There's other processes I can go into that can help you get there as well. But that seems to be the one that is the easiest, most practical way and makes sense because your brain ultimately is just a mushy computer, right? And when we really get deep about what is consciousness and who am I versus what is it that my brain does, your brain's just an operating system. It's not who you are, right? You are what you tell your brain you are. And your brain really just wants to please. Your brain, if I'm moving my hands right now, for those of you watching the audio, you can't see this, I'm moving my fingers. It's because I told my brain told my operating system and all of the circuitry in my body, move your fingers, right? It's the same thing when you're wanting to lose weight. It's the same thing when you're wanting to be a calm person in a situation. It's the same person or the same operating system for when you say, I want to be that confident person that walks into the boardroom and knows what to say and, doesn't react to negative information. That's just you telling your brain how to behave. You're training your golden retriever mind.
Wow. That is some great advice right there. Like funny too. But I love how you talked about having to have a level of self-awareness about what you want and how far away you are, and being honest with yourself about how far you are away from that. Like a lot of people are so scared to actually ask themselves what you really want and how far away am I from getting that? So can you touch on that a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, reality can be scary. Nobody wants to admit the reality of where they are, but that lack of honesty is really the better you can get at facing it. And there's different levels. Like you could be making $1 million a year and you're like, man, why can't I get to 10? Joe's at 10. Why can't I get to 10? Right? You're not ever going to hit a rock bottom when you're making $1 million a year, right? Or what we would think would be a rock bottom, right? When it comes to money, at least, and thresholds there. So you've got to confront a reality. Well, you know what? Joe over there, he's different. Look at his energy. Look at how he shows up. Look at how he makes decisions. He makes decisions faster, more confidently. He's outsourcing a lot of stuff. He's not trying to do everything. I'm trying to do everything still. Like you have to confront that reality. I think that's why, when it comes to drastic changes in behavior, it used to be known forever. I mean, really, this is just something that started creeping in about brain elasticity and muscle elasticity and all these things about how our bodies are not a death sentence at a certain age. Like once you hit 25, you're done. That was the commentary all up until the 80s and even into the 90s. It was just, I am what I am. I think of 90s talk shows and Ricky Lake being like, this is how I am. You can't change me. And I'm like, yeah, you can. Like, yeah, absolutely can. Right. But we didn't know that. And so we really have no excuse. But it used to be that we believed only if you had significant head trauma or were faced with your mortality because you got into a car accident or you hit rock bottom and you overdosed and they revived you and you're like, oh my gosh, life needs to change. Like it used to be those were the things that would make a person significantly alter their life. But now you can do it, but you will never be able to do it until you face that reality. That's what having a near-death experience does, is it makes you take stock of everything in your life and you're like, holy smokes, none of this matters. Right? You're like, this is all just stupid. This is silly. Why am I focused so much on this trivial stuff? And then you just laser focus on what you want and you go after it because you figure you've got nothing to lose. You're on borrowed time. Well, you can create that for yourself, but only if you're willing to be honest about the things you are not doing. And actually, I had a great weekend this weekend. I'm a strong believer. You can listen to the same talk or read the same book over and over again. And even though you've read all of the steps and all of the information many times before, and it seems obvious, if it was really something that was obvious and I was implementing, I would be in a much different place, right? Yeah. So we need to be reminded of the obvious. And so when it comes to us wanting to create who we are, where we want to go, we need to create that list, that honest list, which I did this weekend of what are the things you need to stop doing in order to perform at your best? And what are the things you need to start doing? We kid ourselves an enormous amount of time. We know that there's no argument for saying I perform my best when I fall asleep and nod off on the couch at night instead of just going to bed at a bedtime and having a good restful sleep, right? But yet we don't do it. Like, just go to bed. The moment you go, man, I just yawned. I am a little fuzzy. I want so much to just sit on the couch and just let Netflix play, Big Bang Theory with every episode back to back for me. But no, I think I should go to bed because then I'll be able to perform my best the next day. when I eat these foods, when I take these supplements, when I make sure that I allocate time to socialize every week, when I go to the gym, if I go for a walk in the woods and I hug a tree, when I cuddle my dog, these are all things that I know I will then perform my best. But you need to have that list of the things you need to stop doing too. I don't need to have 3 glasses of wine a night. I don't perform my best, right? Maybe I just have one. Maybe I should have none, because that arguably is the best way for me to show up the next day at my best, right? So you have to have that really, you have to confront yourself with the truth, smack yourself in the face with that shovel, own up to it, and then make a choice. How much do I want this life that I want to live? How much of this am I willing to start executing on today? You don't feel like you have to do the whole list, but honestly, sometimes they all sort of want to happen at once anyway. Like you go to the gym and you work out. It is rare that somebody walks out being like, yeah, now I'm going to go eat some ice cream. It's like, no, you're like, man, I'm not going to waste all that. I'm going for a shake. I'm going to have my protein drink, and I'm going to eat good. I'm going to make a good, healthy choice for lunch, because you've built now this positive momentum. That law of attraction is kicking in. That reticular activating system is kicked in. Now you're seeing opportunities of like, man, oh, the water looks beautiful today. I should go take out a kayak or, something like that. And let's go paddleboarding. Oh, I can go talk to Susie and let's bring her in. I haven't talked to her in ages. Like there becomes this ripple effect of momentum when you start to make decisions, but you got to do it consciously, and you've got to do it deliberately, with you reminding yourself, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Otherwise you will lose touch with it.
Great advice right there. So what inspired you to start motivational speaking?
Well, I've always spoken to some degree, but it used to be just in the context of like, I stand on stage and I talk about things that my company or a company I'm consulting for or something like that's doing. And so talking has always come naturally. One of those labels I was given is I was the kid that had confidence and could go up to strangers and ask them anything, right? And so that became this label and persona that I embodied my whole life. It's interesting though, because my talks have always been of such a practical nature. I do feel I'm very like, let me give you the tools and the step-by-steps on how to achieve whatever it is you're wanting to achieve. And during COVID with the charity, we were actually honored with a grant that allowed me to speak to educators and business professionals and nonprofits across North America to teach them how to build trust and connection online through Zoom. Everybody was getting Zoom burnout and stuff like that. And it was at that moment that I was like, man, I still really like speaking. I hadn't spoken in a long time. And I did about 60 talks over the course of COVID on this same bloody topic. But then all of a sudden, as I mentioned, the first few years of having Build-A-Biz Kids, which we founded in 2018, I didn't actually quite get the mission fully. It hadn't fully evolved. My story hadn't fully hit me in the face with a shovel yet. And it was around that time that I started to peel the first layers of an onion. And I was like, this is so important. This is critical, not just for kids. I mean, what about the people who aren't kids anymore? We don't just write them off, right? Like, how can we really help people to transform? And that's when I was really having my big identity shifts. COVID was a great time because, there's this funny phenomenon that we have. I'll use a college kid who's gone off and they're staying on campus, right? And here they are, they're operating independently. They're waking up on time. They're going to classes. They're managing themselves, doing their laundry, cooking their meals, even if, Mr. Noodles or something. And they're these self-sustaining humans. But then summer comes and they go home and they fall back into their old rhythm of like, Mom, can you get me something? Can you do my laundry? And, it's because they're now in this new environment. So you may have friends where when you hang out with them, you're like, man, I drink a lot more when I hang out with them. Like, these are my party friends. I'm not going for coffee with these people. Like, they got nothing to talk about. We go to the bar and we complain about our jobs and we go there and we get drunk. And that is just a ritual. And that's how we bond. And it's like, yeah. But then you got the friends out there where like, they're your gym buddies. They're the ones who are getting healthy and they're whatever, right? So your environment definitely impacts you. And what was so great about COVID is it was a time that you could be unapologetically anyone that you wanted. You could have transformation without the fear of falling back into old habits, because it's kind of like, say you are the person who decides, I'm going to stop drinking. You think you're going to be able to survive a night out with your buddies who all you do is drink? you're going to be either bored, embarrassed, or they're going to be annoyed with you because you're not keeping up and you're judging them, right? The energy is not going to be aligned. So it's very difficult to make these changes if you keep surrounding yourselves with the same environment. It could be a cultural environment, a religious one, an academic one, a professional one, a friendship one, right? How do you change your persona when you've got these people being like, wait a minute, Ryan, you're a different guy, man. This doesn't sit well with me because now I don't know what to expect from you. I got trust issues. And so you might be like, oh, okay, it's just easier if I just kind of, what do they say? When in Rome, right?
Yeah.
Fit in, right? It's the path of least resistance in that moment, but it's not going to serve you long term. So COVID was a great time for me to not only get back into speaking a lot, getting a lot of great feedback on what that was looking like and feeling like for the audience members and for myself. But then simultaneously, I'm having this massive transformation with my own identity, my own successes, my own wants in the world that I'm feeling like I haven't quite achieved. And then I'm understanding my own story on why I'm so passionate about having kids have these experiences at such a young age. And it's because of my experiences at such a young age and how that saved me. And I want everyone to have that safety net. And for those who are already grown up, like, what can we do to not only help you with a transformation like I've been able to have, but also if you have kids, how can you help them not relive that same pattern that you lived through, right? Help them become living the happy, successful, fulfilled lives earlier than what we've been able to. And so how do you reach the most amount of people? Well, a stage is a really good start. And so that's where that's kind of come from.
Nice. So you touched on a little bit about the Build a Biz Kids. Can you explain kind of what that is to the audience?
Yeah, so Build a Biz Kids is a registered charity where we have communities all across Canada. We're a Canadian charity, but we do have people operating things in the US and Dubai and internationally as well. And basically, we've put together some of the most progressive, robust, and turnkey programming for kids ages 7 to 13. But these programs are meant to be delivered where the kids are. So, the reality is if we want to affect the economics of how, businesses are growing and the hiring of youth and them getting kind of skill ready for joining the workforce earlier. And when I say skills, it's not about, the technical skills anymore. You need those soft skills that I listed off before, right? It's not like in my day where if you said, I know how to use Microsoft Excel, they were like, you're hired. That's amazing. Like, technical skills are just moving too fast. We will teach you when you get on board how to use our software, right? We need you to actually be able to cope. We need you to not ask for, mental health days every 3 days. We need you to show up, be passionate, and bring what it is that you have to contribute to this company so we can grow. So economically, it's a big thing. And then if we're also going to impact these mental health numbers at this stage, it's 1 in 3 youth that have mental health challenges of some kind. And of those asking for help, it's about a 6-month to 2.5-year waiting list for some sort of intervention. And as we know with mental health, it's not a one and done intervention.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a problem. Now, how do we impact that? Well, we can't do this in silos. We can't do this inconsistently, where only every second or third year of kids in a community get access. It has to be accessible, meaning it's free. It's where the kids are, because, if you're a parent in a lower income household, you're working. You can't take your kids to after school programs and drive them around town, right? If you live in a remote community of less than 1,000 people population, like, you get left behind. And in fact, we have communities that have less than 100 people of population that we're able to reach. So we need to figure out, how can we reach the masses in an accessible, cost-effective way? And so, fun fact, my background is actually franchising. So it's all about how do you create systems for scale and growth, and a very unique lens with which to look at a charity model. And so what we recognized is that, where are the kids who need this the most, and where are the masses? Well, they're in public schools. They go to classes at their public local libraries. And they also, if depending on who they are and what their struggles are or their background and lived experiences are, they're attending different nonprofit organizations in their area. Maybe it's for racialized youth or newcomers. Maybe it's for kids on the spectrum or those with trauma backgrounds, indigenous youth, and so forth. We need to make sure we can reach them. So what we do is kind of like a franchise where you have, different McDonald's popping up everywhere, and they can hire a 15-year-old. And after the first day of that 15-year-old's shift, they know how to use the cash register and how to make a Big Mac perfectly, right? It's all based on systems and turnkey-ness and accessibility, just ease, right? So what we have is community partners. So we have a grant. It's called the Canadian Future Ready Education Grant, and public school teachers, so they don't need to ask for permission from their districts or even their principal for that matter. They just apply for this grant. Public libraries, nonprofit program coordinators, they apply for our grant, and that allows them access to our programming, our platform, our kid teaching kid videos, and everything is very turnkey. So even if a nonprofit is going to hire a college student to come in and teach a classroom of kids from some vulnerable sector, that youth, that college student is going to be able to run these programs very successfully the first time out of the gate. Because it's not about them knowing anything about the topic like entrepreneurship or public speaking. This is about teaching them how to be a good facilitator that encourages the kids on how to create and how to create a habit of taking action on their ideas, and then putting them in these real world situations like launching businesses in their community, talking to strangers, or delivering a kid talk on a topic that they're so passionate about, or creating an online course about how to skateboard or how to crochet. It's having these kids go through the experiences, and it's better when they're on their own. In fact, when we have our markets, we have a rule that parents are not allowed at their child's booth when their child launches their business. So the kids are really building that inner confidence and understanding, the perspective, the observation skills, and the decision making that they need.
Wow, you're definitely developing some real world skills in them then. So what's the biggest challenges you face?
For me, the persona that I'm now needing to put on is we've got this momentum building with our charity that is so fast and rapid. We have a waiting list of communities at this stage that are just really wanting our support, and we can grow there very quickly. But we're just needing a little bit more funding to hire, frankly, more people, like more me's, to help with onboarding and getting these communities just administratively all set up. And so for me, the persona I'm needing to step into, having always been from a for-profit background to a nonprofit background, is fundraising. How do I tap into these philanthropists and be like, look at this. This is how it affects you from an economic standpoint, from a emotional relatability standpoint. The number one thing people say when they see what we have these kids doing is, oh, I wish I had this when I was a kid, right? Like, it's the number one thing people say. And I'm like, yeah, me too. That's why we do this, right? And so it's like, how do we reach them, communicate that with them, have them come out to our events and see the kids in action and be like, do you want to help us found an entire community? And because of that, year after year, that's the other thing with our model, unlike most models where, well, we've got to rent a facility and we got to pay facilitators and we've got to run the programs, we got to market it and get the kids registered and all of this stuff. Because we're empowering communities to be able to do this, they already have the connection to the kids. They already have the classrooms. They are the facilitators. That's why they applied. They're the community leaders so passionate about this, right? And so that allows us year after year to keep a sustainable method of reaching every year of kids that come through that school, that nonprofit or whatever, right? So when you found a community, like, you're the reason that community is going to be revolutionized for years to come. And that's the message that we're really trying to get out there so that we can just raise more funding and just do more. Our goal is to be in 500 communities by the end of 2026. When we have 500 communities, that means we're reaching about 30,000 kids every year.
Nice. That's a pretty nice goal. So how do you market it?
For fundraising?
Yeah, like even marketing like the entire business across Canada and everything.
Yeah, honestly, so much of it is word of mouth when it comes to communities applying for the grant. So that's why we have a wait list, right? At this stage, we don't even need to market it. We got a wait list. When it comes to working with donors, that's really about me just connecting with people who resonate with it and then having a conversation, seeing how this can be what we call a triple win, a win for the kids, a win for the charity, but also really a win for that sponsor partner, for that donor partner. What's in it for them? Are they passionate about supporting a specific community geographically, a specific community from a demographic categorization. What is it that really is passionate within them to want to be a part of this? And so that's, word of mouth is honestly, especially with charities, we always have a budget, right? Which is zero budget for marketing and advertising. And so it's really about word of mouth and people just resonating with what we have, and then telling their friends. We do have here in Canada, British Columbia, which is over on the West Coast, just above Washington, we have really big markets. So we've got our upcoming one, July 26th. It's in a city called Burnaby, which is just outside of Vancouver. We're going to have over 50 kid entrepreneurs launching their businesses in a mall. Our last event that we did this in at Brentwood Mall, also in Burnaby, just last November, the mall messaged us and said that we broke a historical traffic record of how many people from the community came out. There's over 12,000 people that came out to see these kids in action, to shop with them, to deny them. It's always good when kids hear yes and no. But yeah, it was an incredible experience. So we host those, which is a great way for people to kind of see us in action, if you will. But we are coast to coast across Canada. And as I mentioned, we have some licensees also in the US and in Dubai. So we do have operations elsewhere. I will mention one other thing too. If there's a parent listening and they're like, wow, you're not in my community, but how can my kid get started? We have also created what we call a solopreneur at-home program. It's a fully voice and video guided program meant for kids between 7 and about 13, 14 years of age. And this is where even if they have dyslexia, learning difficulties, or anything like that, or they're just too young, they haven't started reading very well yet, they can take this program, and it's led by kids. So kids who have taken our programs are the ones doing the teaching. And every time they click on a picture or a worksheet, a voice pops on and talks to them about how to work through this particular module. By the end of that program, they are able to fully launch their own business, from market research and prototyping to sales pitches to packaging to, your table display and where to launch, how to market. They're learning all of those things in one place. And it's only $49 Canadian. So that's even less for Americans. And that's a part of our one-for-one program too. So when you do purchase this for your child, it's going towards the charity, which allows us to then support another child in another community.
Wow. I mean, you talk about building real world confidence in kids right there. I mean, just to even step out of your comfort zone to launch a business or have to go face your fears and go talk to people and all that. That's wow.
Yeah. And it's really interesting too, because the great thing with entrepreneurship is we have such a different lens that we all look through. So maybe you've got a child and they're very creative, right? They're going to love entrepreneurship because they are going to devour the prototyping of their product and designing it and the packaging and their posters and their table display. But they might not care too much about the money and the sales pitching and the market research, but they're going to learn it anyway. But they're going to love that they're able to showcase something and then sell that to people who say, yeah, sure, I'll give you money for that. Like, it validates them so much within themselves that what I am good at is valuable. Likewise, if you have kids who are like, I hate drawing, this is not for me, but I love talking. I'm a social butterfly. I just want to talk to people all day long. And if I get to make some money and sell stuff, that's just like a bonus. Now I have an excuse to talk to people, right? Others just love it for the money. That would have been me as a kid. I was not necessarily a people person, but I was like, give me the money. I will sell you anything. Here, do you want this? I found it. Do you want it? Like, whatever, right? So every kid can kind of see themselves in there. And we've had kids come in where they're like, yeah, my kid just doesn't fit in. They're not into sports and they're not into dance and, these kind of archetypes of who are they and how they should be and what they should be interested in. And in entrepreneurship, it's not only practical and real world, but it really helps them to see that it doesn't just because you've been labeled as bad in math doesn't mean you're doomed. I mean, heck, pick up a calculator. As long as you can add up your sales, you're flying, right? You're good. It allows them to find themselves and the value in themselves for themselves. And that's what's so critical.
Excellent. So how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, my name, I'm the only Leah Koss out there. So LeahCoss, you can find me on LinkedIn and follow me there. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well, if you like. But then Build a Biz Kids is buildabizkids.com, my website, leahkoss.com. So we're very literal with all of our ways to find us on social media and our websites.
Nice. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to talk about?
I think the only thing is anytime that I think any of us decide to go on some sort of personal development or next leveling journey, spiritual journey, we often waste too much time spent on kicking ourselves for not doing it sooner. And there's just no value in that, especially when there's a reason, like it served you. You needed a lot of the components of who you are in order to just get through it, And you don't need to get to the bottom of anything. You don't need to figure it all out. It's about giving yourself grace, leading with love, starting with yourself first, and knowing that there's absolutely nothing about you preventing you from living a life you want. The only thing holding you back is you becoming the you that you want to be so you can receive the things that you want. But academically, culturally, gender, your age, geographics, especially in this day and age with the internet, there's nothing about you. Do you know how many dumb people there are there? When I say dumb, I mean academically dumb. They didn't, graduate high school or graduate college. They don't know the difference between there, and there, like they are millionaires. You can do it. Trust me. There's nothing about you that can't be incredible. And through this discovery of yourself, start to see how you can make your world around you a better place by giving the love that you're giving to yourself and give it to others. And that's where hopefully you can stumble upon your passion, that thing that really makes you light up. And I'm so fortunate for whatever serendipitous, accidental reason that myself and the co-founder started Build-A-Biz Kids. But it just happened to be something that's helped me to peel back this onion and realize this is the only thing I ever want to do for the rest of my life, is continue to reach as many kids as possible and help as many adults shape their lives so that they can feel the way that I've been able to feel, which is freedom, which is enlightenment, which is this feeling of control and knowingness that it really is all up to you.
Wow. I love your mission. Like I said before, I love your mission and your attitude. Such a great attitude to have. So final question. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
When we talk about adversity, I think, depending on the lens you're looking at that through, it's about something that was on your path and you had to overcome it somehow, right? And if you're listening to this right now, you have already overcome so much adversity. And, not even bringing in the topics of race or gender or age or sexuality or culture or religion, just you overcoming that moment that you did something you weren't proud of, or that someone made fun of you for, or that moment that you made a decision that you're like, that was not the best decision, right? You have already overcome adversity, and you will continue to for as long as you choose to, right? Through all of those, you've learned something. And if I can encourage you to do anything, is going back to the give yourself love, honor yourself with the growth that you've had and what you've been able to overcome. If you don't actually take stock of, wow, what did I build and develop when I had to overcome that? Even if it's something as simple as somebody cut me off and I didn't finger them today. Obviously, it's just like, they must be in a rush. And you reflect and you go, wait a minute, that's not my usual reaction, right? That's a part of your reprogramming. That's your inner you wanting to come out. And if you can acknowledge it and say, wow, look I did that differently, that's how you can also start to get your reticular activating system, to get that law of attraction momentum going in that direction so that more of those good things happen. But if you never take stock of it, if you never acknowledge it, then you're going to keep having to overcome the same adversity over and over again because that lesson hasn't been learned. You haven't been able to move on to stage 2 or 3 or 4.
I love it. I love how you touched on history has a way of repeating itself until the lesson is learned.
Pretty much.
Leah, I can't thank you enough for coming on here today. It's been great talking with you, and you have such great insight onto everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, guys, that is all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.